To this day, Juliana and Romero remain among the Order's prominent warriors. Welcome to Raid Story Legends with me, LeilaFox, and special guest Hell Hades. Hey there, welcome to Raid Story Legends. I am LeilaFox. This is a weekly YouTube series where I share lore from some of our favorite champs from Raid Shadow Legends. Continuing on with the theme of duo stories, today's story is for Juliana and Romero. And not just that, I have with us our friend Hell Hades joining. Hades, thank you so much for joining us today for today's story.
Hey Leila, really pleased to do it actually. I'm interested to see where this goes. And I think a lot of the audience will know my love for Juliana and Romero. So
Exactly. And actually I wanted to ask, when we talked about doing this video and you chose Juliana Romero, what was it about them that made you want to learn more about them and their story?
Well, it's funny because quite often when I talk about these two, that they're quite old school characters in the game, quite old school champions, and I don't have a lot of love for them. Like, I feel like they're a bit dated, and they're, quite often they don't feature very highly on my kind of tier list and stuff like that. So
gotcha. Okay.
I thought it'd be quite fun just to kind of explore the origins of the champions. Yeah.
Okay, and that's what we're gonna do today. Is we're gonna talk about their lore, and then we'll see if it changes your opinion about them at all, or if you still feel the same. I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
So sit back, guys, and we are going to share the story for Juliana and Romero. But of course, it is not just love that is marked by divine intervention or tragedy that is worthy of the minstrel's attention. Those are merely good for the dramatic flair that those Knights of the Lute do so enjoy. More often than not, love overcomes obstacles that are less grand on a cosmic scale, yet no less difficult for the mortals who find themselves entwined.
For centuries, the Knights of the Sacred Order were charged with cleansing Teleria of evil in all its guises. But since the declaration of war, they have sworn allegiance to the Queen of Aradia. In league with the Queen's necromancer, these once holy knights now enforce Her Majesty's will and guard her chattel.
The Sacred Order as a whole, while not necessarily enforcing a vow of chastity, does forbid its members from having families and heirs. A precaution to make certain positions of power within the Order pass on by right of virtue and not that of blood. Undue attachment is heavily frowned upon as well, outright forbidden in some of the stricter divisions of the Order.
It is no surprise then that the knights Romero and Juliana had never thought of themselves falling in love. Romero, ever cool-headed and pious, found himself at odds with the young and brash Juliana, whose skill with the blade and fiery zeal led her to the many mortal perils that she, to the young knight's credit, honourably overcame.
But a life full of battles does tend to make emotions run wild. In time, the two warmed up to one another's quirks, learned to appreciate them even. Their eventual union, though it may never be formalized by marriage, remains true and tested. Neither did that union affect their relationship as comrades at arms. If anything, it allowed the two knights to fight as one.
Where Romero's natural cautiousness may lead to him losing momentum, Juliana's brazen but no less skillful tactics ensure that their forces control the initiative. And where Juliana may begin losing herself in the heat of battle, Romero is always there to serve as an anchor of reason. To this day, they remain among the Order's prominent warriors and are ready to bring Lamaya's light whenever it is needed most.
So this is the story for Juliana and Romero. What did you think about this? Did it kind of go along the lines of what you were thinking before, that they feel very old school and not maybe up to times, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's actually quite an interesting little piece. It's quite an interesting little story. More about the Sacred Order than about the two of them, actually. Sort of pulling through some of the kind of situations of they're not supposed to be in allegiance, but they kind of overcome that. It does feel kind of old school, though. What do you think?
Well, it does, exactly. And as we know with the Sacred Order, that's what they are. They're knights. They're supposed to be holy paladins, holy knights of the order. So you're right, like it does feel very old school, but to your point too, is the story does involve what they have to deal with being a part of the Sacred Order. And it seems like it's something you're born into. And that even though they technically aren't supposed to be together, it's something that they're choosing to overcome. That they want to pursue.
Is they actually kind of push on and find a way to do it, albeit through battle. So they actually find a way to work together and to kind of, I guess, value each other in the battle, just kind of complementing what each other do. It's kind of
exactly.
Cool.
And it goes along with the game too. Like in the game, we know that they're meant to work together in the game. You know, like we have that lethal partner and that stalwart partner. So again, to your point, like they found a way how to make this work even in battle. And the game takes it in that direction as well too, is that we see it in this lore that they're together and that they work together and they battle together. And the same thing in the game is that it seems like both of theirs, it's very offensive. Like they're not defensive duo abilities. It seems like they're very offensive, kind of like the lore story as well too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you find that they entwine with any of the other lores in doing this type of work that you do?
No, this one actually seems to be a little bit more, you know, I know we use the word old school, but it really is comparatively some of the others. And compared to some of the other stories, Arbiter usually makes an entrance and she's not in this one, which I think is interesting. And most of the stories, what ends up happening is Arbiter is the one that ends up kind of joining in when the champs need redemption. Or she ends up seeing from afar when a champion that maybe was on a bad path turns around, goes into a good path. And so she sees them as being a champion that could fight for Lumea and to fight on the good side and help Teleria. Now in this story, we don't see her. So the thing that's missing that I would be curious about is how do these two end up in shards like all the other champs do? Because most of the other stories I do read about and share, that's kind of what happens. Arbiter shows up in the end and she either saves them or she gives them an ultimatum. It's either they're dead or they have to join.
Okay.
You know, so that's usually how these stories are. We don't see that here. So that I am curious about, and I would be curious to see how that would be.
I wonder if that last line there then, to this day they remain among the Order's prominent warriors, ready to bring Lumea's light whenever it's needed most. So I guess it's almost like they can be summoned upon when needed. Yeah,
and Lumea, for people who don't know that, Lumea is pretty much their divine entity. She's pretty much God. She's the goddess, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that,
Yep, so that's something new. And then Siroth is the opposite. Siroth is pretty much, you know, the bad part. So we have Lumea, that's the good, she's the goddess. And then we have Siroth, who's the bad one. And so Lumea, that's where, you know, we have the Holy Order, where we have those that are fighting for Teleria. They serve her, like the Arbiter and Sir Nicholas. And then Siroth, we have the ones like Bad Alcazar, for example, like Michald, those that serve Siroth. So that's kind of the distinction on that too, which is pretty cool.
Is the Queen of Arabia actually in the game in any way?
Actually, I haven't seen it either, and that's some lore I would like to see them kind of add in there as well. Like, it's little pieces that they had every now and then, but we don't actually have a champ called Queen of Arabia. The only queen that we have is Queen Eva, but she doesn't fit.
No, not at all, no.
You know, she doesn't fit at all. Something very interesting.
I guess the more you dive into these sort of things, the more you want to know about how everyone starts to entwine. It's cool, actually.
Exactly. And again, this is probably one of the older stories. I know this one was introduced back when Juliana Romero were introduced into the game. Some of the newer lore stories that we have, they do dive a bit deeper into that. So I'm sure the people that are watching, if you check some of the lore stories that I share for newer champs, you're going to see a very distinct difference in the stories. I feel like the ones they're doing now are much more fleshed out. That there's so much more involved in it. And even though this one still is a good one, you kind of tell it's one of the more earlier ones, but it's still nice because it does share about how these two came together and what they overcame to be together. And they still do continue to be very prominent members of the Sacred Order as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining in. And Hades, thank you again for joining me for the story. It seemed like in the beginning when we started, you didn't exactly like them too much. I'm not sure if maybe you like them a little bit better now. knowing that, you know, what they've overcome, what they've had to do to be where they are.
You know what? Thanks for having me on, firstly, but maybe they hold a slight place in my heart, whether it's a place of joy or just there's definitely something there. I don't know what it is, but no.
A little something, a little feeling of something, right?
Definitely.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this story for Juliana and Romero. Take care.
Thanks, Leila.
Bye.
Bye.